Usually we start the podcast off with some kind of joke or a little skit that we put together, but we thought this week, after reading what was just a horrifying news story, that this really deserved to be spoke about in its own right. And it was the story of Ruth Perry. She was a head teacher who worked at a primary school, and tragically, she took her own life. And more light has been shed on what happened. And essentially, her school had been inspected by Ofsted, and she'd been passed down the judgment that her school was inadequate. And that's the language that is used by an Ofsted rating. And in the interim period from her receiving that judgment to when the report would be published, this tragic event happened. And I think what we need to do is just give her the respect she deserves and really shed a light on what is a profession that is steeped in these horrible, horrible pressures.
This is absolutely dreadful news, and I think it really has put Ofsted in the spotlight right now. And it's brought something really important in teaching to the forefront of everyone's mind, which is well-being. It's something we've talked about a little bit before in a previous episode. Because at the end of the day, working in schools can be incredibly, incredibly stressful. So if you're having a hard time at school, visit educationsupport.org.uk for some tips and support, or they've even got a helpline that you can use as well.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Teach, Sleep, Repeat. My name is Dylan.
And my name is Hayden. Thank you so much for tuning in to episode 8. I can't believe we're this far in already. We're absolutely loving it. And I must say, Dylan, I'm feeling really good.
Oh yeah?
Because we are booming. We are getting so many new listeners in our podcast. We've got people from all over the country, people from our house, like your house, like, you know, everyone's listening.
A whole 2 households, is that what you're saying? Well, you know, what's really interesting is we do have the numbers. We do have an app. So it tells us all the statistics and stuff. And jokes aside, it is really exciting for us because we've wanted to do this for a long time. And we're getting close to 100 unique listeners every week already, which is just crazy. Can you imagine? I know we live in the world of millions of views on TikTok videos and stuff, but can you just imagine 100 people walking around just to listen to us chat? Rubbish. Yeah. Like, honestly, I can't believe it. It's so exciting.
That's 100 customers, Dylan. 100 customers. Running joke there. If you don't get it, go back and listen.
Just think of all the merchandise we can sell them. I can think of tops with undurfed written across it, an inflatable dolphin that we just sell, but it's been sold half deflated already, of course, because it's ready for the funeral.
Yeah.
And if this is the first podcast you're listening to, I completely understand how you have no idea what we're talking about. So do go back and watch them. But Hayden, great note to start on. I'll absolutely love that because we are really excited and we're going to keep doing it. We're going to keep doing this. And you guys are the ones who drive this forward. You're what we're doing this for. And your stories and you writing into us, you can find us on Instagram, Teach, Sleep, Repeat Podcast. You can find us on our Gmail by sending in any stories you have, teachsleeprepeatpod@gmail.com. Get in touch, guys, even if it's just to say hello. We want to chat to you. We want to know you, our audience. And we also want that endorphin rush when you share one of our reels. So if you can share one of our reels on Instagram, if you can spread the word of the podcast to your friends, that would be absolutely amazing for us. And Hayden, guess what the last thing I'm going to ask for is, because I'm a bit obsessed with it right now.
Oh, go on.
A rating on Spotify, please, because we are going up and up and up. We've got a bunch of followers, but our rating number is less than the number of followers we've got. So I know you're out there, guys. Just click that 5-star. It helps us so much. We really appreciate it.
Listen, right, we want that organic growth. So every single week, we're going to tell you to go and share our reels and give us a rating, all right? It's all about the organic growth. Anyway, should we move on?
Completely organic. From the goodness of your own heart and from the goodness of me constantly telling you what to do. Should we actually get started with this podcast?
Yeah, let's do it.
So come on then, Hayden. I suppose this is the time where you have to tell me all about your week. Can't wait. Come on. What happened?
Well, listen, right, there's a bit of a throwback to last week. You'll know if you watch any of our reels, some of them you can see that I'm wearing that beautiful necklace of beans. Where I was keeping my neck warm, all right? I got a bit of whiplash from playing squash. Anyway, it got way worse. You weren't actually around, so you didn't see this. You didn't know what happened. I just took myself off to minor injuries because my neck was really hurting.
You didn't.
It hurt so much, like to the point where, other people were like, maybe you should go and get it checked out. So it wasn't just me. I wouldn't have gone. All right, I'm just going to put that out there. But I went there because I
wouldn't have gone, but I did go.
Well, yeah, because people convinced me to go, but I also
fair enough. So I assume you got there, you got seen, and then they kind of put something in place for your horrific neck injury, or they just laughed you off. Which one was it?
All right, It might be one of those two options. It doesn't really matter, does it? Because the important bit is just checking that I'm all right. Okay, and it just happens to be that I am all right. And yes, they did laugh it off and tell me to get some painkillers. But I sat there for 3 hours.
You could have just gone to the shop and got yourself
3 hours, Dylan.
You listen, these guys are under immense stress, Hayden. They're striking because of horrific working conditions and pay, and they're just stretched to the limit because people go into them to see them for a bit of a sore neck. I want to see you.
I did feel a bit bad. I did actually feel bad. I was like, oh God, I am that guy. I am that person. When I got there, I remember I messaged you actually after about 3 hours of sitting around saying, hey, I've seen this whole room turn around. Like there's not a single person that's in this waiting room that was here when I got here. And you said to me, you were like, it probably means it's quite a low priority then. And I was like, I wanted to be angry at you. And I was like, oh man, he's right. I clearly shouldn't be here.
Oh my goodness. There's people walking in with their thumb half falling off and you're there going, my neck's a bit sore. Let me in, please.
I think my neck's broken.
Like, literally.
Whilst I'm texting you on my phone looking down. Yeah, my neck's broken. Oh, it was stupid, really.
Well, sounds like a great use of the NHS's time. Thank you for your service, Hayden.
No, that's absolutely fine. Well, something did happen at school as well, actually, I'm going to tell you about. Just a quick, again, a bit of a throwback here, but it was quite funny. It made me laugh. I had a new member join my maths class this week. Which doesn't happen too often, but I had a newbie join me, and obviously they came into the other children immediately. You know what they're going to ask the player right at the start of the lesson. It's either can we play blow dart, can we play blow darts, or can we play shootout, which they're doing. And so she sat down a little bit confused, and she said, what's the blow dart? And then before I get to answer, she says, she assumes, wrongfully makes an assumption here that this is a normal type of game. She says, is it that one where you just kind of go head to head and the person that gets it wrong sits down? And I was like, no. Proceeded to explain her this insane game that we play in maths.
You're there just shaking your head. No, putting your jacket on, your explorer's jacket. No, darling. Handing her the elephant ears to put on her head. No, this is no normal game.
All the other kids already put on their different ear sets. They're all ready to play.
You've got the zebra, the cheetah, the jaguar. Oh, sorry, you're the. Yep, here you go. Let's go.
Yeah, so that was quite fun. It was enjoyable explaining the game to a new person. So that's the highlights of my week anyway. What about you? Anything interesting?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing happened this week, and I know every single teacher can relate to this, because there is just something, isn't there, about finding a treat or a stash of food or something just to keep you going when the job is just absolutely making you so tired. You finish the day, and I went down to year 5, went down to have a chat. It was for an actual work reason, but they had a box of biscuits on the side. So obviously I'm edging towards them. I was like, hey, yeah, you're right. I've just got this. Me just slowly edging to, hey, yeah, you're right. Yeah, fine. Not bad. Thank you. All fingers just like, doing like the hand off Wednesday. The hand off just like fake. Creeping along. Hey, yeah. Honestly. Oh, yeah. My day was fine. I'm the worst with small talk. Like, my day was good. Yeah, lovely. Yeah. Oh, custard creams, is it? Oh, look at that. Oh, and then they offer you, can I have one? Oh, yeah. Thank you. Brilliant. Yeah, I'll take one of those. Lovely.
I'm being good, so but go on then.
Yeah, classic. So then obviously we got chatting even more, and I was chatting away, genuinely got into a conversation, but ate like 3 or 4 in the process as well, because if you're gonna have a conversation for that long in a school where time is so valuable, you want a few biscuits as well. But anyway, the best part came when they went to put the biscuits away. Funnily enough, obviously normally the worst time when they put the biscuits away. Nope, because they opened this cupboard, a stash, crisps, and the best thing, so crisps, chocolate, more biscuits, and even at the back, you know what I'm like for my drink, Hayden. I like to constantly be guzzling on water, guzzling on sun. I'm always thirsty. Yeah. At the back of the cupboard, I honestly, I kid you not, a 2.5 litre bottle of lemonade. And I was like, okay, cool. Went to the kitchen, came back with an empty glass straight away. And I was honestly sat there eating lemonade, scoffing some Fox's biscuits. They'd gone back into their classroom to mark. I stood on my own in the shared area, literally just having my own little snack party. So that was a good highlight for the week.
I love how much, you're the only person I know, actually, and I'm sure there are others. I'm sure I'm the weirdo here. That you love drink so much. Like a good drink to you is like almost equal, I feel like, to like a good snack. Whereas to me, there's no comparison. I don't care. I'll just drink water all day. But a chocolate treat, oh yeah. But you're weird. You drink so much liquid in the day. I don't understand.
Oh, this would be interesting because, number one, apparently it's a huge sign of diabetes. So I should probably go to the doctors and waste that time as well. But the second thing is
minor injuries.
Yeah, my neck hurts and I'm thirsty all the time. The other thing is that I'd be really interested to hear from people then. about whether they are interested at all in what they drink, or is it just water? Because I drink lots of water during the day because if it's there, I'll drink it. I'm not drinking Coke in front of the children or anything like that. But yeah, I do wonder, where do most people fall? Do they like a good drink? Does it make them excited when they get a quality drink in the fridge and they're like, yeah, banging, not even alcoholic, like just a nice drink that's not water? Or do they just not care? They'll just consume whatever's in front of them. I don't know. We really tackle the big issues on this podcast. So if you want to let us know what's your favorite drink that you have in the day. Oh my goodness.
Dylan, I've just remembered something that happened last week. It's at your expense, obviously, and it's about you drinking. Obviously. So we went out for lunch last week, listeners. We went out for lunch, all right? Dylan, myself, and our partners. And something really funny happened related to Dylan's strange liquid. That you drink so much stuff. It's ridiculous, right?
Can I really, very quickly I've got no idea where this is going. So I'm literally listening.
You will do. You'll hear the story and you'll be like, oh God, yeah, you've exposed me.
All right.
So we'd finished our lunch. This is the context, okay? We finished our lunch in which we had a drink. There we go, okay? Yeah. We'd already had a drink with our lunch. Now, most people, I would say, when you get like a full-size drink, that tends to do you for the whole meal, right? Unless you're out for like having wine or beer and stuff like that. It's different. It's just like soft drinks, okay? So we finished our meal and we didn't get pudding, but Dylan was like, do you know what might be nice? I'm going to get a hot chocolate. And I was thinking, fair enough, that's like your pudding. It's another drink, but whatever. You know, you've just drunk a litre of like Pepsi, but fine. And then when he gave his order, he was like, oh, actually, and he grabbed the waitress back and said, actually, can I have a Coke as well? And sorry, he said, we'll have a Coke as well, because he was embarrassed at the fact that he was the only person ordering 2 drinks. And then the lady came over with the drinks and put down the hot chocolate in front of Dylan. And then looked, obviously, naturally, around the table for, okay, who's having the Coke or whatever it was. And we were all quick to jump on. So, that's also his as well. It's just, he was so embarrassed. But he does drink a lot.
I don't get embarrassed that easily, but the idea of this woman bringing a drinks order over and it's all for me exclusively, and you all finished. There was nothing on your plates. You literally sat there and watched me drink a hot chocolate while sipping on a Pepsi.
Yeah, but you know.
But I tell you what, it was Pepsi Max, maximum taste, maximum sugar. So
that's how it works. I suppose you would want more, wouldn't you? Maximum flavour.
Well. The thing is about the stash in year 5, this is where it leads into a really big moment for our podcast, Hayden. This is a historic moment. Oh. And do you know why?
No.
We're about to do our first ever shout out. Okay, so this week, this week we were talking to people about what they do whilst they listen to the podcast. Yeah. We got loads of answers, the classic ones: driving, doing the shopping. There's loads of different people telling us on our Instagram, because, come and join us, by the way. Find our Instagram and let us know.
Share our reels, by the way. Share our reels. Please share them.
50% of this podcast is me going, can you please give us things?
Organic growth.
Anyway, we got into one where we found out we have an avid listener. Her name's Sandy. Hey, Sandy. And she listens often whilst doing her ironing. So I know you might be very embarrassed right now and a bit shocked that you've got a nice shout out from our podcast. Just be careful. Don't burn that shirt. Pick it up. And we just want to say thank you for listening. We appreciate Sandy. You and your time. Classic. What's she like, old Sandy?
Honestly, always ironing. Always ironing.
Always ironing.
To this.
Always ironing.
Classic.
Literally. Classic Sands.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you. And if you ever want anyone to have a shout out on this podcast that goes to about 100 people, which we're very proud of, but if anyone wants to shout out, please just let us know and we'll be on it. One other thing, Hayden, this week that I just keep my eye on it, and I know we like to get political sometimes. I don't want to just drag everyone down with us. Yeah, me. I don't want to drag everyone down with me whilst I get political and stuff. But I just wanted to mention, obviously, in the week as well, Boris Johnson. If you've not watched this Boris Johnson, he's gone in front of a committee, and they're basically trying to find out if he lied to Parliament. And it's a really big deal if you lie to Parliament. Yeah, I'm not sure we need a 11-month-long committee to find that one out. But so he's literally sat in front of this committee, right? It's a bunch of politicians from his party, from the Conservative Party, Labour, SNP, and they're questioning him on whether he lied, because he said in the Houses of Parliament that no rules were broken and guidance was followed at all times. Obviously, the Sue Gray report came out and the Met Police had their investigation and found them guilty, and he got a fixed penalty charge notice. I just beg you guys just to go and watch it, because it is the ultimate example in the classic politician barefaced lying and people just kind of being like, oh, okay, cool. Because the best part of it was they literally show what he said to him on a screen, right? So he stood there. He sat there, watching himself say, the guidance and the rules were followed at all times on this big TV, right, in this committee. And then immediately they show a picture of him. Do you know the pictures of him holding glasses up with alcohol?
Where he was proved to have broken the rules.
Yeah, where he got a penalty charge notice and he had people in the room not socially distancing whatsoever, right?
Yeah.
And he literally, he's staring at the picture of this, of these people stood next to each other with a table full of wine and beer, right? They say to him, so basically, how do you explain this then if you weren't socially? And his genuine answer, he says, he just goes, we were following the guidelines. That was his, we were following the guidelines. In a picture of him not doing it. And they said, well, here are the guidelines. And they read the guidelines to him. Stay 2 meters plus apart at all times where you can. If you can't, 1 meter plus with necessary provisions in place, whether that's a mask or maybe like if you're sat at a desk, maybe those plastic, dividers down the side so that you're not like breathing on people. And ask yourself, does everyone at this meeting or this workplace have to be here? Could they be at home, or could this meeting or thing that's going on for your business not happen at all and you still get on with your work, right? And it's so clear that this is just a get-together, a social. They're having a drink. They're drinking wine. Like they're not working. They're having a drink. And he just goes, yes, we had all the provisions in place. Obviously, it's a small place. We have to be crammed together, but we had all the provisions in place, like plastic dividers and all this. And then the guy literally says, there's no plastic dividers there. There's none in this picture. There's none in this thing that you're staring at. And he just goes, yes, well, we did this, we did that, we did everything else. He just lies. Just denying the picture completely. And it comes down to these two things for Boris Johnson, right? One of two things have happened. He either knew the rules and he lied.
Yeah.
Or he doesn't know his own rules and he genuinely thought he wasn't breaking the rules. And he's the most incompetent prime minister that's ever existed.
I suppose it's a double negative, right?
Pick your side, Boris. Oh. Yeah, which one you're going to go for? Because it's just mad. And I'd just like to rant every now and then.
I just find it so, like, I was thinking about how that is quite relatable to teaching, right? But and that sort of behavior of just barefaced lying, because it's just generally something you only do when you're sort of like below the age of 10. Honestly, it just is. It's like kids learn to lie, and then they tend to learn when they're a bit older that doesn't really work. Like people just see through it, and then your reputation goes downhill, and actually people don't like you as much. Like that's just how it works. And it's just mental to me to think, that's politicians' tactics, is it? To do what the children do in my class when they've blatantly done something, you've caught them red-handed, and they go, "No, I didn't." It's like, well, you did, because I literally saw you 3 seconds ago do it. So don't say you didn't, because that's just going to make me annoyed. And they just get away with it though, but they always do, and I think they've learned that. It's like the whole strategy of and it's blatantly a strategy. I don't need anyone to tell me this is a thing to have worked this out. It's like the most basic level of inference ever. That if politicians will they never say sorry. They've clearly worked out that if you never, ever, ever, ever admit to doing something wrong, that there is a net gain to that. Of course, a lot of people will see right through it, but clearly more than 50% don't, otherwise they wouldn't do it. And it's just, I hate all these stupid tactics because it's just child's play, but it works on a mass scale, apparently.
This kind of happened in a committee very briefly. Last thing we'll say about it was one of the people interviewing him and asking him questions basically said, there's quite a few of your supporters who have been working really hard in the last few weeks to completely discredit this committee, basically saying it's a lefty coup to try and kick Boris out, basically. So that if they do find that he was actually in the wrong, what could happen is he could be kicked out of the Commons. He could be like literally not allowed to be an MP anymore. It's very serious from his career because that's all he cares about. So the guy said, this has been happening. Can you say right now that you accept that we will be fair, whatever judgment we come out as? Basically saying, can you tell us, one, that these people are wrong to be doing this, to be discrediting this before it's even started. Mm-hmm. But two, he said, you kind of want the best of both worlds because these people, your supporters, are setting it up so that if they find you guilty, then the whole committee is just a farce. It's a lefty coup. They're just trying to get rid of him. But if the committee find him not guilty, suddenly the committee's word is acceptable and is like absolutely fine and completely vindicates him. Yeah. And it was just such a good question. And all he did was just ignore it. And he was just like, look, I've said why I think that this committee has to be really impartial, and I hope they will be really impartial, and I look forward to you finding out that I was in fact not breaking the rules and not misleading Parliament, and I hope that's the conclusion that you come to. And it's like, cool, but are you going to accept that we might go against what you think and still be fair? And he just literally goes,
he won't.
I don't quite like that wording you've put there, but what I will say is that I'm absolutely sure that once you've read all the evidence and you've read what I put forward, you will find me and exonerate me of everything. It's like you just didn't answer the question at all.
Pathetic. That's all I can say on that.
Right, let's dive straight into it then. You've seen the title of this podcast. It's what we want to really talk about this week. And it all stemmed rather from a Telegraph headline that we saw. And the headline was simply, teachers negotiate for more pay for less work. And it really kind of just riled us up, didn't it, Hayden, when we saw that? Because it's the whole idea of the lazy teacher stereotype and how much work the teachers actually do and all of those classic things that we'll get into in a second. But what really annoyed me was I went to click on the article to read it because, I'm not ashamed, to say that I will read anything from any newspaper because I'm just interested to see what the points of view are. I might not necessarily agree with them, but I find it interesting sometimes to look at the counter argument, even if just to kind of shore up what I think, in my opinion. But it was behind a paywall. And I thought, this is classic. The amount of people that will see this but won't want to put the subscription to read the Times every month, but I've seen this headline and it just perpetuates those myths. And it got us a bit riled up, didn't it, Hayden? Yeah,
big time, because it's a classic stereotype. It's been around for as long as I remember, that's for sure. Even when I started teaching, it was this whole idea of, cool, 13 weeks holiday, God, lazy bunch. And, I've always been like, haha, yeah, that's funny. But deep down, you do the job for a few years and you're like, oh, that's not true at all. Like that, it doesn't work like this whatsoever. And I know we've got a few examples, haven't we, of how different jobs and different careers have incredibly different timetables. It doesn't make you lazier based on the amount of holiday you have in a row.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've had jobs. We've got husbands of people we work with, partners who might go away for 6 months in a row and then be off for 6 months in a row. That's half, but they go away, they stay away. That's a big commitment away from family. There's no right or wrong way to do your job. There's no one way in which the hours are distributed. And something about teaching that I want to get into today is just to explain to everyone, this is how much work that we actually do. And I'm not looking for sympathy. I'm not looking to say we're better than anyone else. This is just how it actually is broken down, because there's a fundamental disconnect, I find, between the general public's idea of what a teacher does based on our contract, based on our holidays, based on that. I can imagine if you're a parent, that annoyance of, I've got to keep these kids occupied for 6 weeks now. Like, it seems like a long stretch, doesn't it? But with what we actually do put into the job. And you're absolutely right, Hayden. 13 weeks off a year. I mean, we do get 13 weeks off. It's correct. It's that classic thing of you're not wrong, but context is so key. When was the last time, Hayden, you did a 9 to 3? Got into work at 9, left at 3? Is that something that happens as a teacher?
I mean, it doesn't ever happen, does it? That's the thing. People often say, oh, you just work 9 till 3:30. You just get in a bit before the kids, leave just after. It's not reality. There might be one teacher in this country who manages to do that, and fair play to them, like teachers all. But the chances are that doesn't happen anywhere for anyone.
I don't know any school now that starts at 9. I don't know any school that actually starts at 9 where children come through and enter the building at 9.
It has creeped back, actually, hasn't it? You're right. Because it definitely used to be a thing that 9 was kind of the standard time. If anything, like 10 past 9, no, 9:15 sometimes. But you're right. It really has creeped back. I find that most of my friends now are like, oh, my kid, the kids come at 8:45 or 8:30 or whatever. Yeah, that's an interesting point.
So I just want to dive into this and give the context for people, because it's something we've mentioned before in the podcast, and we said jokingly, well, we're a whole podcast towards this, and we actually are putting a section of our podcast rather, and it is directed time. So Hayden, could you just explain to everyone what directed time is? Then I'll come in with the details, the finer stuff.
Yeah, so really, really in a nutshell, right? We have to have something called directed time in our job because we have a wider framework called teaching standards. And there are essentially lots of roles we have to complete as teachers, but it's hard to put a time frame on everything. So what the system has come up with is something called directed hours or directed time, where the school is allowed to say, for this amount of hours a year, which is obviously broken down into per week typically, we can tell you exactly what to do in that time. But outside of that time, you do things as and when you need to meet those teacher standards.
Yeah, so directed time is broken down to 1,265 hours over the year. And that is over 39 weeks. So that's 195 days. So 39 weeks in the year, that's where we get our time off from, the 13 weeks. 5 of those days are inset days where we're expected to go in and do training. But what's really interesting is comparing this time. So if you look at 1,265 hours, if you compare that to the amount of hours someone does in a general full-time job with, let's say, 4 weeks holiday, they're looking at much closer to 1,800 hours.
And how many hours a week is that on?
So that's on 38 hours a week.
Yeah.
For 48 weeks.
Right.
That's considering you get 4 weeks holiday paid. You're looking at 1,824 hours of work during that year. Okay, so a standard full-time contract, some are 37 and a half, some are 38. It's just roughly around there. So there's a huge disconnect there. And you can see where these stereotypes come from. That is 2/3 of the hours that teachers have in their contract. But I want to play a little game with you, Hayden, right now, because you're literally a teacher, as we all know. And we did that PPA skit at the start of an episode previously about all the things teachers have to do. So I want to highlight to everyone, these 1,265 hours, I want you to tell me, Hayden, the things that you believe are included in this directed time.
Sure.
As our contract states, and then we'll talk about what's not included and how actually that's going to make up the difference.
So I knew this was coming up, and I purposely avoided looking up anything to do with directed time, basically. And I thought it'd be more fun to just guess. Obviously, outside of our directed time, we have this kind of caveat of you also have to get lots of these other jobs done, and it's all kind of included in the salary that we're paid. So it's kind of hard to say that we're only paid for those directed hours, right?
But it's really strange, isn't it? Before you start guessing, how we have a contract which says X amount of hours, and then it just kind of completely ignores that by saying, but you have to get everything else done.
yeah.
It's like,
I know.
Well, when? So there's no point having this number of hours, is there? Because that's not the job.
It's almost an admission of, by the way, these jobs you actually can't get done in these hours that we're saying are directed time.
Yeah.
But we're just gonna leave this random number anyway. We could increase it, but no. So I think because of that, with that in mind, obviously there are going to be jobs that don't fit into it.
Come on.
So number one,
I think you can get a full house here. Come on.
I reckon so. I reckon I can do pretty good. Number one, teaching. But sort of contact time with the children, including all of those times, like in the mornings and when you're dismissing them or whatever, when you're not teaching, but you need to be with them.
Yes.
Contact
time, right?
Yeah, just contact time. I think there has to be something to do with planning. I know that's going to be a funny one.
PPA. We talked about that.
Okay, exactly. So PPA I know is going to cover things like planning, and I bet it covers things like marking and assessments that we have to do. It probably all comes down to that as well.
We're going to come into that in much more detail later. It's there, but it's not really enough. But keep going.
Okay, that's interesting because assessments is big. It takes a lot of time to mark tests and things.
Yep.
I reckon parents' evening has got to be in there.
Parents' evening is in there.
That's pretty standard. Reports, report writing.
No.
Oh, really? I really thought that one was in there.
Not directly in directed time.
Oh, that's interesting. I just thought that was a given.
Yeah, no, not in the list on the NEU, I'm afraid. So unless they've got their information wrong, it's not actually directly in that time. A lot of schools give time for it, which is very good and grateful, but it's not in directed time.
I'm going to presume, I don't know if this is the right sort of thing. It's like break duties, lunch duties. Is that a thing that would be in directed time?
So any duty is in directed time, but not lunch. Lunch is 1 hour where technically it's not on our contract. We're not paid. Of course, teachers always take the full hour and just chill and relax, don't they, Hayden? Definitely, and don't do any work. Definitely, that's true.
Don't get me started.
But technically, lunch hour, not at all in directed time, cannot be directed during that time, cannot be told to do something or X, Y, Z.
Now, that is interesting, and we'll talk more about it later. But anyway, I'm trying to think what else might be in directed time.
You've pretty much got them all. There's only one last thing in my list here. Think about something that happens every week.
Every week. Oh, is it meetings?
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Any meetings after school, so professional development, training, and if you have a year group meeting and stuff, you can't be directed to do that unless it comes out of your directed time, of course.
Oh, okay.
So there's lots in there, right? There's lots in there, but nowhere near what the job entails. So the whole point of this kind of exercise, Hayden, is just to show that yes, the bare number of hours in our contract is much less than what you say the average worker might do in a year. But if you add up a generic timetable, let's say from 8:30 to let's say 3:30, because you have to dismiss children as well, and that's part of your directed time, you're still with the children. If you add up those hours of just being in school, not counting lunch hour, but from when the children walk in the door to when you've dismissed the children at the end of the day, the contact time, and the meetings. So we add on an extra hour a week. And another hour a week, let's say, for CPD.
Yeah.
Let's just say let's add that in there for good measure, because usually a couple of hours a week where you're directed to do meetings and CPD. If you add up all of those hours together, you get to about 50 to 100 hours below contact time. But then you've got to add in what we said: parents' evenings, community events, open evenings, all those things that kind of happen throughout the year.
Right.
That gets you pretty much to our contact time, to our directed time, sorry. So the teaching, the delivery of the teaching, the meetings you've got to go to, anything you're directed to do in your time in school gets you to the directed time.
So,
okay?
So basically, the directed time that we're given only just covers like the you know, like the bare necessity of our job, like the actually being with the kids. Yes. So other than the PPA that we get, which we've already joked about, which is, you know, about 2 hours a week, all of the planning and any like extra assessments you do, any marking you have to do, which is obviously a ridiculous job, that's not actually included.
No, and think of it this way, right? That was it, 1,200 hours of contact time, vast majority is teaching, right? Those lessons have to be made. They're not just there. They're curated by us. And I just want to break down planning, because again, people might think, oh, you can just grab planning from online, but it's just not true. You've got to adapt it to your class. You've got to build it from scratch most of the time. If your school's embarking on a new curriculum, that's a huge lot of workload that's going to be put onto you to plan it in your own time. Maths, English, all the afternoon lessons, you've got to interpret a curriculum, read a curriculum, know what you've got to deliver to your children, prepare the teaching slides, prepare the tasks. That's just to be able to deliver it in the first place, which is all we're getting paid for in our contract. The preparation, Hayden, when was the last time, I said it earlier, you spent a lunchtime just having your lunch when it's not part of directed time, so we can add this on to the list. What do teachers spend most of their lunchtime doing?
Honestly, and I really, really, truly think I'm not exaggerating here. I think I genuinely speak for every single teacher in this country. I would say the average teacher spends at least 50% of their lunch hour preparing for their afternoon lessons. Because guess what? Afternoon lessons these days are like 2 hours long in total in the average school. They don't just magically happen. You need to have your resources ready to keep children entertained and learning for 2 hours. It takes time. And that's for a normal lesson. Now, this is where my gears really get ground. Because when you do...
I've never heard it said like
I know.
that.
I thought I'd change the tense there.
I love that.
My gears are getting ground here, son. So it's when we have lessons, which are amazing, by the way, for the kids. I love these lessons, and I'm not taken away from doing these. I think these are great and the best experiences. But art lessons, DT lessons, cooking lessons, if you do that sort of thing, they take, honestly, usually all of your lunch hour and probably a bit of time in the morning, or desperate help from another adult because you realize an hour isn't enough time to prep all the stuff, the resources that they need. So yeah, that was my little rant. But lunch hour, the fact that that's not paid, which I didn't know, by the way, I genuinely thought that was just a paid hour of our day, I'm just thinking now, over the 8 years, how many hours of free labor I have given in my lunch time. And it's totally normal, expected, by the way. I've also been asked to do things in that time. Many a times. Can you come do this as a first aid? Can you come and help with this? Can you come to that? Can you help me prep this? Could you go to meet that? Could you go bring that parent? Like, I didn't even think anything of it. I just do those things because I thought it was my job, but I'm not paid.
No, genuinely, it is not part of directed time. So, and here's the thing, just again, going into that clause that's in our contract, there is just a professional standard that they just tag into the contract so that they get away with this. You have to put in the additional amount of time, not specified, it just says adequate to do the job. So everything else that's just expected, but not in directed time, just has to be done, and it's written there in your contract. It makes it an exponential, it makes it an infinite contract. In any other job, if you have to stay late until 9, you have to, not let's say 9's parents' evening might be part of directed time, but let's just say you have meetings after, or you run over to 6 p.m. You'd put a form in for overtime. That can't happen for us. There's no such thing as overtime, because it's just, cool, was it part of the job you've got to do? Obviously, else I wouldn't be doing it. Cool, well, you've already been paid for it then. And I just don't get it. There's no incentive. There's no incentive there. Like, why am I going to work till 6 every day if it's the same as me working till 4:30 and I get the job done still? There's no professional kind of respect in terms of our time as teachers.
I'm actually really deep in thought now, because you said something interesting earlier, and I've just never thought about this, right? You said, like, the average job, let's say you work in, 48 weeks a year, you said 38 hours a week. And you said it came out to something like, I'm just going to round it to like 1,800 hours. It was around that kind of. area.
Yeah, it was basically very similar to, if you add all our extra things together, it comes out to about 1,800. That's a standard full-time job. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, but our directed hours were 1,265-ish, something like that.
Yes. Yeah.
And
yeah.
so there is, so I kind of am having a thought now about like how I do understand that then we are like, technically those directed hours are actually a lot less than the average job. So it does kind of make sense that we should do things outside of those hours. But what I'm struggling to understand is, one, what is the average amount of time teachers are really doing then? Because we don't seem to have actual figures on it. Do you know what I mean? It's clearly way more than this amount. And two, why isn't there an actual cap? Why why isn't there an actual? Okay, yeah, we expect this is a minimum, but also this is a maximum because, you know, well-being is important. I'm just really confused as to why that hasn't been put in place. I don't know if I'm being silly.
I'm genuinely so glad you asked, because I ran a more simplified version of what we've just been saying, because I'm aware there's lots of numbers been bandied about. The kind of summary of what we said so far is, yes, our contract is much less. Yes, we get 13 weeks off, but it's so intense during term time that we work such long days and don't really stop. That honestly don't stop. We eat for 20 minutes maybe. And then in our break time, we're prepping something. In our lunchtime, we're prepping something. After school, we're sat down, we're marking straight away. It's so intense. So I just thought, okay, we've broken down the hours that technically we do, right?
Yeah.
But I just thought to myself, let's do a really simplified version of this calculation of just taking your average teacher from the time they walk in the door at school to the time they walk out. Okay. And I think it's really fair to say, I know me personally, this isn't necessarily what I do, because I've kind of got into a habit of coming into school slightly later because stuff might be prepped, and then I might stay later some days. It varies for everyone. But I think a really fair average for a teacher, getting into school at 7:30 and leaving school at 5:00. A very standard time, I'd say,
I think
to get your preparation done in the morning, and then also after school to get all of your marking done. Because let's not forget, you might have 90 books to mark every single day.
And some of those days will include meetings and things as well, or are we adding that on top?
Yeah. No. So I'm saying 5 is a really fair underestimate of
kind of thing,
you know, that's an average time you might leave, because there will be days we'll leave at 5:30, 5:45. There'll be some days where you might be able to leave at 4:30, but I think a fair average is 5:00.
I think that's really important as well, because I don't want to come across like we're exaggerating and making like, oh, look at us teachers, we do so much. I think it's really important that listeners understand that is a very modest, I think, average of what teachers do, because I know that there have been many years in my career that I did considerably longer days than that. And also, like I said, other years where my work days were completely different to that. But that's a good average.
Yeah, so that's the point. Exactly right, what you've just said. We're not sat here going, oh, life's so hard. We're just trying to get people to understand the actual hours and the work we do, who don't know and aren't even horrible about it. They're just unaware. They just don't quite get it. They don't see it. So yeah, 7:30 till 5. That's 9.5 hours, right? What I am going to do, and I'm being perfectly transparent here, is I'm just counting the lunch hour, because I promise you, like you said, 99% of teachers spend more than half their lunchtime going for it. Okay. So let's call it 9.5 hours, and we'll take a bit back because most teachers work longer than these hours every day. So let's just call it 9.5 hours out of your home when you get to school and you leave every single day. That's 47 hours and a half every week. So think of a standard full-time job, just under 40. We're working just under 50. It's just way more intense. Okay. That, by the way, is from getting into school to leaving school. So if we extrapolate that out for 39 weeks, because obviously we don't work for 52 weeks, we work for 39 weeks, and we then multiply that out, we get to the magic number 1,850. And if we compare that to the standard full-time job of 38 hours a week for 48 weeks, that's 1,830 roughly.
Yeah.
So they're very close. They're the same. It's just that we're working more intensely for 6 weeks, then we get a whole week off. More intensity for 6 weeks, then we might get 6 weeks off, and it goes for the year. Okay. But you may have noticed something about my calculation.
Yeah, I was about to jump in because I think I know what you're going to say. Obviously, like the burning thing here is, and I know teachers at home will be like, you've not included this huge part of the job, which is every weekend in term time. Like I try to be really good over half term. I'm not even going to, this is another level. Loads of teachers that I know, most teachers that I know work so much over half term breaks as well. I'm not even going to include that. But honestly, weekends, every teacher puts in work at the weekend, whether it's 4 hours on a Sunday morning, whether it's all day Saturday, whether it's a couple of hours Sunday night. You just cannot plan a week of lessons inside your 2 hours of PPA with the other 65 jobs that you have to do in that 2 hours. It's not possible. a bit of your weekend has to go to it. So the fact that you haven't included that in your kind of total there of 1,800 hours just shows that that is a very, very modest number. And it's almost definitely more than that.
What I really want to just drive home now, and thank you so much for listening to us for this long, because we are really passionate about just sharing this information because it's just not understood. And I think the point to summarize what we're saying is just the act of going to school, teaching, delivering lessons, doing everything involved in our day and going home is already a full-time job across the whole year. It's just more intense. We also then have this expectation built into our contract to do things outside of that, which happens at our weekends. In term time, the ride is wild. There are business owners out there who'll say they work 80 hours a week. More power to you. Unbelievable. So hardworking. You deserve everything you get. We're not comparing. We're not saying, oh, aren't we the best? Or, oh, aren't we so hard done by? No, we get a decent wage. You know, we want to keep up with inflation, but we're aware that people work a lot more than us and actually end up getting paid less as well. It's not a comparison. It's just information. And hopefully you know a little bit more now about the actual workload as a teacher. And if you look at the title of our podcast, how much the teachers actually work, well, what's the answer, Hayden?
Well, hopefully you've answered that question. And the answer is, we have no idea, but somewhere around 1,800 to 7,000 hours a year.
We've just spent half an hour explaining something and to not answer the question.
Yeah. I think I know. I'll tell you what, the bit that we've answered is teachers work a normal amount, if not more. Simple as that. Just condensed across the year. Bish, bash, bosh. Now we're all informed. We can move on.
All right, I've got a quick one for you, Hayden. A little story that got sent in to me by one of my friends who listens to the podcast. And I'm going to frame this as a game, okay?
Okay.
So I'm going to read to you a word. I want you to tell me what this word means.
Okay.
Because we all know you're brilliant at, unpicking root words and stuff. The word is... I'm going to tell you the word first. Give me your thoughts.
Okay.
The word is baroom. Baroom.
Baroom. I feel like you're going to embarrass me here. I don't know. Should I know what this word is? Am I supposed to know what this is?
Are you telling me you've not heard of the word baroom?
No. Is it something to do with a room? I don't know. I feel like an idiot now.
Right. Let me read you a sentence and what we can do, Hayden, we can read around the word, okay? We can read around the word. Ready?
Yeah.
I found him dozing comfortably by the baroom stove of the old dilapidated tavern.
So a colour of some sort then?
Comfortably by the baroom stove.
Or warm, I suppose. It's a stove.
So exactly what you're doing right now is what my friend was doing. He said, what's baroom? I don't understand what baroom is. Bar room.
Okay. All right. It was 2 words. Like
BARROOM as
Bar
one
room.
word. And he said he went to Google and he was searching baroom. Oh, it's a room where you can get drinks. That sounds like a nice place to go. Still didn't click. Did not click at all until he was reading the next page. Went, wait a minute.
That's exactly what I did with Undurf. Tell your friend he's very Undurf for thinking this. Okay. Yeah. That's funny. See,
what was really funny, by the way, what was really funny about this was I just kept reading because he sent me the paragraph and it goes on to explain that this bloke he find is a bald man. And I was like, it's Hayden in the baroom with his undurfedness.
It's a link back to me. Everything comes back. So on the topic of, me being a fool, I'm going to drag you into this now because I've actually got a story, a confessions of a teacher. And the teacher happens to be me and kind of you because you're involved in this story. You just don't know what it is.
Okay, I'm looking forward to this.
You'll remember.
Okay.
So I remember this earlier, right? And I just started creasing up. You know what you do and you just remember something random. And it is a memory from maybe second year of teaching, perhaps. Like, it would have been my third year, your second year. And we worked at the same school. And both of us, I'm going to confess this right now because I'm not afraid. I think a lot of other people will share this. We hate doing displays.
Oh, don't get me honestly. Let's link this back to directed time, shall we?
Yeah, we should have mentioned this.
Oh my goodness.
Because depending on the school you're in, displays may be the bane of your life, or they may be something that's just kind of quite casual and you just update them every now and then. But displays for non-teachers are those things in the classrooms with the stupid borders. They've looked the same since about 1960. The coloured backgrounds, and you put stuff on the displays, and they look good. No one looks at them, but they look good. They make the classroom look bright. Anyway, Dylan and I quickly discovered that we absolutely hate doing that job. It's like there's
honestly
on top of all the other jobs we have to do. It's the bottom of the pile.
I've got an option here. I can either sit and mark these 60 books that I need to mark every day, or I could go and update that display in the corridor that 3 people look at every month. Which one should I do?
So one year, Dylan and I, being rebellious after making our silly stickers as well that you hear from one of our podcast episodes, we just thought it would be funny, a fun game to see how long we could leave this one particular backing up on of this display, and it wasn't just any old back. It wasn't just like a yellow color or something. It was an underwater theme. So the joke was, how many topics across the year can we somehow make some tenuous link to an underwater background theme so that we never have to change it because we really can't be bothered.
Well, I remember this because it started off strong, right? Water cycle. Yes, a big ocean, nice one. But we also did Egypt, and I remember thinking, oh, River Nile.
Yeah.
And we also did living organisms and food chains. It's like, cool, what's the food chain we can think of under the water?
I'm sure it fell down when we had to do a topic on like volcanoes and earthquakes and stuff. we were just like, oh, what do we do? And then I remember us being like, tsunamis. It's just like didn't even come up in our lesson really, but yes.
Natural disaster. It was tectonic plates, wasn't it? So it did link. But our main focus was not on tsunamis. I think we did like half a lesson on tsunamis. Cool. Tsunamis in Norway. Let's get that done.
And we kept it up there for a staggering, it was more than a year actually. It was more than a year. We did a whole year and then we just kind of continued to use it for a bit longer. And the joke sort of ran out eventually when someone was like, are you going to change that display? Or
I guess so.
Yeah. I'll tell you what though, didn't it just show that for a whole year, no one noticed. Not a single child or adult in our school remotely noticed or commented on it, just highlighting the enormous waste of time it would have been to change it every 2 months.
It's just, look, I know that it's lovely. Like, I like displaying children's work, actually. That's one thing I do like doing because it can become like a bit of a prize and a bit of a, ambition for them to get their work on the wall and stuff. Yeah. But I don't even do that as much as I used to because honestly, truly, when I'm in the classroom, I'm just focused on delivering that lesson and delivering it as best I can for the children, and they get the support they can in front of them. Do you know what I mean? It's lovely. And some classrooms, genuinely, I completely get that they look unreal and they're really nice places to be in. But it just doesn't always actually directly link to their learning and their progress. And I think we're one of the worst professions in the world for doing stuff because it's what we do, rather than because it's, clinically proven or, there's a clear line. It's tick boxing again, right?
So I'm really curious to know about the people listening, particularly obviously if you're working in a school, what you think about this. Because I realized a couple of years, I guess, into my career that this tick boxing exercise of having displays, which was just really standard practice, I didn't really question it before then. I was like, yeah, of course you do. You have to have displays. You have to, make the children engage with these displays in the classroom, show a bit of their work, have really fun displays as well that aren't their work, just things to get them engaged. And I realized after a couple of years that it absolutely should just be a preference, because I personally think that displays are just a tool that you may or may not remotely use. And because I know some teachers who use their displays religiously and they're really effective. They have working walls that they change all the time. Their display is like another whiteboard to them. And that's the way they use it. And I'm like, oh, that's, always amazed by that. But I feel like that what gets extrapolated from that is then, okay, cool, everyone has to do that now. And it's like, oh, but that's not my teaching style. Yeah, everyone's got to. So, well, no, because I will get that learning across. I just happen to have put that time and effort into this other thing, by the way. And I'm going to use that as my teaching tool, and I'm going to display these things in a different way. So I don't know if people agree with that. I don't know if I'm just like convincing myself because I don't want to do an extra job.
No, I think that, listen, look, that's part of it, right? When we've got a list of 15 jobs, we have to prioritize. And in terms of my own teaching style and your teaching style, that's never going to be top of the list, is it? But what might be top of the list is going to get a new blow dart from the blow dart shop because you're really good at shit.
Exactly. I'm not making a display. The kids need a new blow dart. You've rinsed me.
Hello,
there.
Mr. Stevens. Hello, Mr. Stevens. Can you show me where all of your key vocab is for the children to look at? Oh, no, sorry. It's actually a jungle display now.
Oh, man. I tell you what, though, back to the serious point. I will do a lot of things like where people do have like key vocab and working walls and stuff, like they display key stuff for their learning. I'd put that on a little sheet and they have stick it in their book as a flap, and it's like, cool, let's use our little like key knowledge vocab sheet or something. That just happens to be my kind of way of sticking key things there that they have access to all the time. And other teachers do it a different way. And I'm just sort of like, can we just not make this crazy expectation of spending hours and hours and hours and hours doing displays because it just looks nice from one perspective of basically an outsider looking in? It doesn't have any meaning, any context, unless you really delve deep into, okay, how's it used though?
Well, if you're a teacher, let us know what you think. And if you're not, thank you for listening to that.
Yeah, I hope you nodded along. Was like, yeah, I wouldn't make a display
I must
either.
say, they do fascinate me. I find these people amazing who, I've had people message me saying, I didn't know that about teaching. And I love the idea of non-teachers just enjoying this podcast because it's just, us two talking about our experiences, having a bit of fun. I still don't get it, by the way. So if you are listening, you're not a teacher, don't understand why you're here, but I really, really appreciate it.
But I do understand why you're here, Dylan, because they're here to share our reels. They're here to go to our Instagram and help us promote organic growth, as we've been saying.
Organic growth right from me pestering you constantly. So thank you guys. I love that.
Right, Dylan, we're going to move on to a toxic story, just the one this week from a school. So you can get your teeth stuck into this. I know you like to get...
Is it going to get me angry?
Oh, yeah, you're going to get nice and riled up.
Okay.
And actually, it links really well. It harks back to our conversation earlier, and you'll see why. Okay? So someone recently wrote on a forum talking about PPA, which is something we've obviously mentioned. And essentially, their problem was this. They haven't had PPA in 3 months. And PPA is that planning, preparation, assessment time for those that are listening new today. It is a right for teachers to have 10% of their time a week as PPA. They haven't had PPA for 3 months with no particularly good excuses other than, we just haven't got the sort of cover to get you out of class.
No, not remotely acceptable, is it?
Well, they're asking what the legal requirement was. So that was their kind of question to this forum.
I'm going to get annoyed again. Hey, I thought we'd calm down. I'm going to get riled up again because it's not even a question. Like, how could you have, I can't even speak. How could you have the brass tacks to say, nah, like, what do you mean? Nah, it's not an option. It's not something we do to be kind. It's built in because guess what? Like we just spent half an hour telling you all, the actual job itself doesn't fit into our time. And we get a measly 2 hours as a token. Oh, look, maybe you could sort out your medium-term plan and go off at home and still do all your planning. You're not even getting the token. Like in terms of legality, you just get that. You get it. And if you ever don't get it, then, between you and the people in charge, your SLT, you sort out payback time because it's not even a question. Like this guy's going to come, they're going to end up having to do reports soon. There's parents' evening coming up. When on earth do we prep for that? Do you think we just turn up at parents' evening and just kind of, yeah, you're right. When do reports get written? Just by the magic fairy whilst I'm teaching maths? It doesn't make sense. There's no question.
They need that time. And within that sort of forum, it was really interesting because I was kind of reading it with people's feedback and things like that. That they sort of went on to say that, that essentially they're having to get the unions involved because the school's not doing anything. And they're facing like disciplinary actions for not getting stuff done. Like the cheek of it. They're facing disciplinary actions from their school for not getting these extra things done, the stuff that gets done in PPA. And their point is, but I've not been given any PPA, so I'm not just going to do it even more in my own time. Like you said, it's a token amount of time anyway. So the least you can do is give us that time. And so I'm with that person. I stand with that person. Don't do it. Don't do it. Make a stand. Make a point. Because actually, no, we do a lot. We do a lot of free stuff. You don't need to do this extra 2 hours a week. You are entitled to it.
And by the way, that's not just 2 hours, contact time. That's 2 hours of teaching, 2 hours of planning, 2 hours of marking. All compounds.
It's true, actually.
That's him. When we have PPA, the whole point is that, we kind of have a bit more time after because we've not got afternoon lesson to mark. We've still got maths and English to plan and mark, but you're saving on all of those things. It kind of compounds, and it's not even a question. It's that classic thing we said earlier when we had our podcast about toxic schools. When people at the top just lie or just pretend something's okay because they're in a position of power, and it's not. It's not a game. You don't get to choose when you're in charge of someone. It's a really high pressure job. It's a really, really high pressure job, but you cannot just pick and choose what your staff are entitled to. That's just not the way it goes.
I think they're going to be in trouble. I'll say that. I don't think the school's got a leg to stand on if they get the unions involved.
That was a really good one. I know it's an annoying one, but it proper good story of just wow, you have to hear that every now and then to remember there are some schools where this really does happen, and counting ourselves lucky for where we are. All right, then, to finish off, a couple of stories from the classroom. Like I said earlier, guys, you make this podcast. So if you follow us on Instagram, send us a message. We will reply. Send us an email with your stories, because they really do just make this podcast so good when we get to read these stories out to you guys. So I've got a couple of short ones this week, Hayden. Cool. Let me start off with one of them. And I want to give a kind of like a bit of context here to everyone who's listening. They were making these puppets, basically. It's to do with sewing, right? Because one of the things we do in our curriculum is sewing, DT. They're making these puppets. And the team had walked in afterwards and said, we're having a look at what the children have made and picking them up, and they look dreadful. And they were like, oh my God, look at this one. This is unreal. Look at that. This one doesn't even look like a person. This is crazy. And then this teacher who wrote into us said that they picked up another one from the table, and they said, oh my God, this is the worst one. Look at this one. Who did that? Was this person listening? And then the teacher in the class turned around and said, that's my one I made before the lesson.
Oh, no.
It was the teachers.
Dreadful. Oh my God. I'd go so red if that was me.
Just again, the context of today, like we worked so hard for our lunch hour. This teacher had sat through their lunch hour making this puppet.
I'm going to model it to the children. They can aspire to do this. Oh, there's no worming your way out of that.
No, it's just the fact they've been going through them all. Just just to pick it up and go, what is this? What is this one? It was the teachers.
Oh, poor. I'd like to know what the aftermath was for that.
Oh, I think it was very much just like, it's lovely. I'm sure it's very nice.
Oh, I was only joking. I knew it was yours. I knew it was yours.
And the worst thing is, if they're listening to this podcast, they just found out they didn't even get paid for that lunch work.
Oh no. Wow, how to rub salt in the wound. What's your second story?
I've got a quick one here again. This is from a person who worked in a school. So they were a governor and a TA, and they worked in the school in various roles. There's classic people who, again, just make the school run, just do all these jobs that need to get done.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'm going to read it as she sent this in to us. I went into school once with my hair done, and a few kids said they really liked it. That's always nice, isn't it? When you walk in and you kind of done. My kids do it whenever I trim my beard. Like, haircut, added bim.
No dandruff. Bit less dandruff on your chest there, Mr. Price, today. Looking good. Must have had a clean. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, kids, I use Head and Shoulders on my head and my shoulders. So anyway, getting that boost from the kids is nice, isn't it? Because 95% of children, they will just be lovely.
Yeah.
But this one kid just said, I look like a man. This woman wasn't a man, so she got a haircut. So I was like, okay, thank you, kid. Lovely. Not the nicest thing to say to someone with their brand new haircut just walking in. Anyway, this teacher was on playground duty, and that day, the same kid had been saying something to other children, another girl, about her hair being tatty. So this kid's clearly got something about her hair to go around telling everyone how awful their hair is. And the girl obviously got really upset, who got told that her fringe was tatty, and she came over to me crying, the teacher, and I just said to her, tell her she needs her fringe cut. So clearly, still feeling, anger at the fact this child had come in and dissed her hair, she said to the kid, just go and tell her she needs her fringe cut.
Oh no.
Not trying to diffuse the situation or anything. Just told a child to go
She's
back.
just used this child as a vessel, basically, to impart her own anger and...
Yeah. Oh, go and tell her she needs her fringe cut. Brilliant. Anyway, the child literally did that. Oh, no. And then she kind of very quickly realised once the child had run away, maybe I shouldn't have done that. So she does no more than tell the kid that I said she needs a fringe cut. Oh. Miss said, well, you need your fringe cut.
That's awful.
The other kid folded her arms and just glared at me. So just glared at the teacher from across the playground. I was waiting to be called in the next day, but it never happened. All that happened from that day was the fringe kid just put clips in from that day forward.
Oh no, gave her a complex. Wow, that's funny.
Just went home to Mum, can you buy me some hair clips, please?
Okay, turns out that I've got a tatty man fringe. Just using our own insults. Oh. That's
I thought that was brilliant. Just that letting the mask slip every now and then, because children can say stuff to you. You just have to brush it off. They're just children. You have to brush it off. But sometimes they say something like, "Has it been snowy? You got dandruff on you?" And then part of you's like, "Oh, well, if Hayden said that to me, I'd be coming right back with a retort."
Yeah. One of my favorite insults about me, because like I said, we try to teach the kids humility. We laugh at jokes as long as they don't get inappropriate, I think, and that don't cross a line. It's one of my favorite insults, because usually it's just something about me being bald. It's not that funny. I just sort of pretend to laugh, like, "Oh yeah, I've heard that joke a million times." Best one to me was they were looking at me intently. This happened twice, actually, funnily enough. So looking at me intently, and they were like, "Where does your forehead stop then?" And then did this action, right? And even if you're not watching a reel, you can imagine this, where they put their finger on their forehead, like just above their nose, and they kind of moved upwards to show the sort of normal stretch of forehead. But then obviously I don't have any hair there. So they just carried on, and then they went all the way down their back, down to their feet, up around the front of their body, and went back to their nose again. Like, oh, full circle.
They didn't.
Yeah. And I found it so funny. I couldn't even pretend to be annoyed at the fact they insulted me terribly, my forehead being the entire circumference of my body. Yeah. Cracked me up.
Oh, turns out I'm 100% forehead.
Yeah. Oh, doesn't get worse than that.
Oh, they do just cut through sometimes. I've had a similar one, but my favorite one ever was just a really blunt one. It was just really blunt, and I just didn't know what to say. I just didn't know what to say at all. This child, again, I was helping this child, and I could kind of just tell immediately that you can just tell they're just looking at you, right? Not listening to me helping them at all. Just like kind of zoned out. It's just staring at me. Right, again, not my chest this time, my face. Just staring at my face. And I turned to her as if to say, "So do you understand?" And she just went, "Why do you have spots?"
What an insult.
What do you say to that?
I just know a part of you was actually offended at that. I just know it.
Well, it's not, you don't want someone just to say that to you, do you? I was like, okay, and so my response was literally just, "Oh, I don't know."
one tear rolling down your eye. But another one, right, of you thinking about kids picking out your spots, like just so brutal, but they don't even realize it sometimes. Anyone that wears a shirt will understand this. If you don't wear shirts very often, you might not, but obviously we wear a shirt pretty much every day. And obviously there's buttons going down and there's gaps in between the buttons, right? So, I'm 30 now, all right? I'm a little bit heavier than I was when I started my teaching career. I've got a bit more of a belly, all right? And
but you haven't changed your shirts in 7 years, though.
No, they're all a bit too small. So I remember one time I just didn't realize, but one of the buttons had come undone, like kind of near my belly button. So a bit of my belly was just more visible. You know what I mean? And I was just bending over, just trying to help a kid, and they were just staring at me with disgust. And then just like pointed, just like that. It's like, just pointed at me. And I looked down and I immediately felt really embarrassed. I don't know why. It was like, it's one button undone and it's slightly, you can slightly see my belly hair. And I was just so embarrassed. And that kid, they didn't go, "Oh, Mr. Stevens, just so you know, one of your buttons is undone. You might want," they don't be nice about it. Like I'd say to you, "Oh, just careful, one of your buttons is undone." They just, at me, like, brilliant. Now I feel self-conscious. Thank you.
I was really enjoying that story, and I truly believed it until you said, if I had my button undone, you would just go, "Oh, Dylan, you've got your button
that's
undone."
That's true. I would not.
No, you wouldn't.
Yeah, that's true.
You'd be getting your phone out, filming it.
Yeah. Oh.
Okay, so we are at the end of this week's podcast. I like, by the way, Hayden, how, it kind of evolved. I think one episode we said extended episode, and it was like an hour and 15. And now it's just every episode is an extended episode. But again, you guys seem to enjoy it. You guys seem to like it. And jokes aside, I know we joke at customers, give us reviews and stuff, but genuinely, you really motivate us to actually come back every week and keep doing this, because we absolutely love this. We'd be doing this to two people, and it was just our parents, wouldn't we? We'd still be coming here. We still enjoy, literally me and you, listening to it again after. But the fact that so many of you are getting in touch with us, are following us, are giving us the ratings, are following, and are, of course, sharing the reels. I will keep saying it, but it's so nice. And I want to say thank you to you guys for doing that, because it's given us a little boost, hasn't it, Hayden? It's a nice morale boost.
Absolutely loving it. So yeah, massive thank you from the both of us.
One quick note. Those of you who keep texting myself and Hayden every week asking about the Pritt Stick story, we've got some good news and some bad news. Okay. The good news is the Prit Stick story will be in your ear holes very soon.
Yeah.
The bad news is we don't know when. See you next time.